Hello again. Hopefully should have a little bit better quality on this vid. Better audio, better visual, no helicopters. But today I'm here to talk about the esoteric spiritual side of Covid-19, coronavirus. A lot of people just kind of see it on the surface, but there's also a lot of people who recognize that it's really just a physical manifestation of collective lifestyles, of the way that we've existed inside of society up until this point. And it can be scary to kind of realize that. And I know a lot of people have this positive connotation to like pre-COVID, right? Like everyone wants to go back to pre-COVID. Everyone is kind of associating the negative to post-COVID, you know what I'm saying? And that can be a dangerous thing because everything before COVID is what led to COVID, you know what I'm saying? So if we go back to that, who knows what we gonna manifest, right? You know? It's a scary thing to think about. For me, going pre-COVID and really not acknowledging our collective responsibility to really shift our attitudes going into post-COVID. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot of like scapegoating and blame that I see going on. A lot of people will blame the virus itself, just blame the virus, and that's the reason why the majority of people's worldviews and lifestyles and way of life being comfortable got shaken. Can blame the virus. You can blame politicians. A lot of people would like to blame the politicians the way they reacted to it. They're talking about cover-up. Some people say the shit made in a lab. None of that really matters to me because I just see it as a representation of all of our choices, me included. Some people blame other countries. They'll blame China, A lot of people blame China. I feel like mainly in the United States we see that. A lot of other countries blame us in the way that we handle the situation here and our kind of lack of communication to it. You saw a lot of countries closing their borders to us. If you in the United States watching this, it's just like a lot of scapegoating, a lot of blame being put outside of ourselves, and it doesn't really let us see that this has been a collective build-up. Since we're all an extension of nature, it's kind of nature talking back to us. You know what I'm saying? Whether that shit was made in a lab, whether this shit did come from nature, we are nature. So either way, it's a manifestation of the way that we've all been living our life. That's why it affected everyone on such a grand scale. And that can be scary, It can be scary to see it exist inside of your experience, inside of your mind, like your patterns of living, have kind of contributed to this, me included, man. It's a scary thing, but it's also a liberating thing if you can really accept it. It can be very, very liberating, and it can really bring about a lot of hope. Because if we go back to living the way we was living, who knows what might manifest, you know what I'm saying? I don't think COVID is the worst case scenario, you know? A lot of people had to be quarantined. A lot of people had to sit with themselves when they haven't really been forced to do that like this in a lot of us, any of our lives, you know? A lot of people, it's the first time in their lives where they really had to sit with themselves and decide whether they were comfortable with themselves. And that kind of showed us a lot of the shared wounds that we all have. It showed us the collective wounds that, like, we all have. And before this pandemic, no one can really ignore that mental health was a conversation. Like, mental health was a trending topic. It was just, yo. Hey. It was just kind of a more lift into that veil. Like, I feel like a lot of people didn't have to look at it unless you was really struggling with it yourself, and your family saw you struggling with it, your people saw you struggling with it. A lot of people didn't really have to look at it, and a lot of people didn't really have to notice the depression, the anxiety that was in them, because it wasn't really affecting their lifestyle till they had to sit with it, right? It wasn't really affecting the way you were moving and going about the life that you were living until everything stopped, and then you really had to sit with it. And, like, again, it can be a scary thing or it can be a liberating thing. It's just kind of the way we all react to it. 1 in 5 people pre-pandemic actually sought help for mental health, claimed they had a mental health disorder. But post-pandemic, they say that number is more close to 1 in 2. So now 50% of the population is identifying with some type of mental health disorder. 50% of the people in that 1 in 5 group, they identified with it but couldn't really get the right help. You know, they thought the resources they had were inadequate to really help them with that mental health. And now we going to 1 in 2, and 80% of the people don't feel like they have the tools they need. So it's being exposed. It's not like the pandemic created this wave in mental health. It was already there, and now we're just seeing it. That's really what I'm trying to say. Like, this shit's always been there. Most people, if you live in a big society, it causes, like, you have to be depressed in some type of way just to exist in a city-like environment, like a societal-like environment, where you have to subscribe to group thoughts, you gotta go to school, maybe. Like, a lot of it doesn't let nature, we're an extension of nature, so a lot of it doesn't let nature do what it needs to do naturally. Let's talk about pre-pandemic mental health. What were we actually doing about mental health? what were we actually doing about it? We're medicating ourselves, pushing it down, not actually getting to the root cause of the removal of self and how that is really the root cause of depression, anxiety. You know, it's not because something happened to you that was wrong in your childhood. It's a removal of self that goes down generations and generations and generations and generations. And a lot of times, if you were in the 50% of people who even sought help, you were just going to be medicated, or you go to therapy to kind of rebound that. And talk therapy, you know, it can work almost in a spiritual self-actualizing way by just having that mirror, but a lot of times it just gives you a space to let it out until it builds up again, right? And it's really been hard for us to get down to that root cause, and I believe this is nature telling us we've been putting band-aids on a wound that needs stitches for generations. You know what I'm saying? For generations, your parents' parents have had this wound, this generational curse that people have just been kind of putting band-aids on, but it ain't getting no better, you know? And there's been a lot of points in our lives where we could have acknowledged these things, but we just kind of chose to push it under the rug and put a band-aid on top of it. That's good for society to grow, and like it's good for the machine to grow, but it's not necessarily good for our overall health. And nature talks back. We're an extension of nature. I can't say it enough. And nature will talk back inside of you and around you until you get it. You know, it's going to talk louder and louder until you get it. And there's a lot of times, there's some good examples in our human history where we failed to listen to nature. There was the Atlantic slave trade. This is some real shit. There was the Atlantic slave trade being directly linked to hurricanes. You know, you don't have to believe this. It's just another esoteric kind of physical manifestations, but a lot of people have acknowledged this on a high level. The point in West Africa where the point in West Africa where slaves were loaded on these ships is the point where most hurricanes are occurring and brewing up. It's where the storm's kind of beginning to start. Follows the slave trade to where it reaches the Caribbean islands, and that's when the ships would stop before they would reach the Americas. That's where it kind of starts to manifest physically, like where the hurricane separates from the water type deal. And then before it reaches the coast, it goes up through Maine, where a lot of them landed. That's when it really wreaks its havoc, right? And that's hurricanes. And there's a lot of other tropical storms that happen in other parts of the world, but what we call hurricanes, you know, the feminine nature of this planet, a lot of people associate with the black woman. So they say hurricanes are the spirit of the black woman. You know, our failure to listen to each other, empathize with each other in the past has its representations in nature now. Even a more scientific one, anyone who knows about the Dust Bowl in the 1800s, like late 1800s, there was the Dust Bowl when we started industrializing the way we farm food. We started using these machines to over cultivate the land. And in the Midwest in America, we weren't using the traditions that we've always been using, working with nature. We started kind of stripping the topsoil and going hard with it, and it created the Dust Bowl. All the topsoil died, created this big storm, and it was a lot of the big cause of the Great Depression. You know, people got fucked up. After the Great Depression, we had the Second World War, and manufacturing switched over to making a lot of petroleum. Jeeps and tanks and planes and shit ran on this petroleum, this crude oil. And there was such an excess of all this petroleum that we've made after the Second World War. I was trying to figure out a way to use it. One of the ways they use it was extracting some of the chemicals from this petroleum and use it to fertilize the soil. So now we don't have to heal the earth. We don't gotta go back to the way we've been doing things with crop rotations, letting the soil naturally replenish itself, you know, let nature do what it's always been doing. Now we're just spraying the topsoil with these chemicals, and the plants started changing colors, and there was like kind of overt changes, like things is different with the food now, but we kept manufacturing it. And this is kind of the base of our farming today. Now we use a Roundup, and we use different bullshit that we put on our food in order to manufacture it in this industrial scale. You know, I can't say it's a good, bad thing. It's why we're here now, but it is what it is, right? It's just a representation of us not listening to the earth. And you can directly link the start of this chemical farming with the rise in autism in children, with the rise of and adults, man, with a lot of these chronic inflammation. They talk about all these different diseases and all these different ways to treat the diseases, but a lot of it is just chronic inflammation, these cancers, these things that started when we started chemically treating our food to mass produce it on this grand level. And nature was always telling us, you know what I'm saying, and we just didn't listen. It's just one of those representations. The last one, probably the most obvious one that a lot of people talk about now, is global warming and sustainability. You always hear about sustainability, but it's all that. It's just nature talking back, you know. There's always been nature talking back, like, hey, maybe you shouldn't burn up all these resources, or shit's gonna get hot for you. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you shouldn't industrialize in your society this way, or, you know, shit's gonna get hotter and plants are gonna start dying, and we're gonna run out of water, and it's gonna be more floods and more wildfires and shit like that. You know? Nature's always been talking to us. Nature's always been talking to us. It's just kind of been our failure to respond in an empathetic way to nature, you know, and like really feel nature's presence and the co-creation, the responsibility we have to work with nature. A lot of 50% of the planet don't have access to clean water. It could be more than that, but a lot of this planet doesn't have access to clean water. You know, it's like, I don't know the exact statistic, but I think it's like taking 50 showers. It's equivalent to taking 50 showers eating one cheeseburger. Because that animal, just so you could have that food, it had to live a whole life. It had to be farmed. It had to consume resources. And not only did it have to consume resources, we had to use water in growing food for that animal that we could have just ate ourselves or made food for the hungry. You know what I'm saying? It's like this, even with the not sharing resources equally with each other, you're going to see countries start to panic over water, and people are talking about this more now too. Like, the water shortages that are going to happen is going to change a lot of the landscape. Eventually, we ain't going to be fighting over just land or money. It's going to be like natural resources that we've been hoarding and stripping from the earth that people are going to start fighting over. And that's going to look way more scary than COVID, you know? You can't get clean water, bro. Like, what the fuck? You can't feed yourself. You gonna go into primal mode. None of this in the house for 3 months shit that's gonna seem like a breeze compared if you can't get to clean water. You know what I'm saying? If your food's making you sick, bro. Hey, that's what I'm saying. COVID is not the worst case scenario by any means, but it is an opportunity for us to come back to ourselves. And I don't want to end this on no scary shit or no negative shit. I just want to, like, put it out there as it is, man. Like, it's really just an opportunity. It's really just an opportunity. It might be us getting off lucky, you know what I'm saying, depending on how we respond to it. If we really can sit with ourselves and respond in the right way and start actually listening to nature, then it can be an opportunity for us to come back to ourselves and maybe reject some of the ways that we've been led, you know, reject some of the lifestyles that we just accepted as normal but weren't really natural, you know. It can send people to seek truth within themselves and not outside of themselves, you know. It's a difference between believing something and knowing something, you know. And it can really just give us an opportunity to know ourselves rather than believe in a past version of ourselves. So we don't just go on believing everything is okay around us when it really hasn't been okay for a long time. You know, it's just an opportunity to heal what's always been there. It's an opportunity to listen. Peace. I love you. Be safe. Drink water. Bless.